What a show off. This is round 6 NEPG Little Raccoon Enduro in Wellston, Ohio. The weather was great, trail was great. It rained on Friday and then was clear till Sunday when we raced. Little dust in the open sections, and then all the rest of the woods were really nice and tacky with no dust. It was a little slick, and from listening to other people talk about this race who have done it before, they say that Ohio is just notoriously slick, as just something you dealt with all day long. You'd go into a corner and it'd be like moon dust. You could kind of blow through a corner. I also had gone through previously and greased all of my bearings on my bike, just normal maintenance, and I guess I under tightened my steering stem nut and made my front end want to over correct if I would turn. So I'd have some sections like just little mistakes. I'd come into a turn real hard and the front end would want to knife, or they had these weird V-out things where, that's what I was calling them at least, and it's where you'd come down a hill and where it would meet to go up the next hill, it was very abrupt instead of being like a smooth roll through like I'm used to. And so after I'd hit those, my front end would get all weird and loose, and it was just made for a rough race for me, trying to fight around that the whole time. But I couldn't really complain about it. Was nothing about the conditions that made me ride bad. It was nothing about, I actually didn't ride that bad. I felt good on the bike all day long. It was just something about that steering issue, and I was having issues keeping focus during the race. It's like I just couldn't get myself into race mode where I really need to be, pushing and charging the whole time. I was just kind of riding. And while I didn't feel bad on the bike, I could tell that I wasn't pushing as hard as I was, which resulted in me getting 10th and 30B. Which is not a race result that I really want to contend with, but I'm still third in points overall for 30B in this series, which I'm doing okay. I just got to have good showings in the rest of the races that I'm doing. The trail, apparently part of it in like test 1 was old sprint enduro course. So those courses, from what I can tell, because I've never done a sprint enduro, they are a little wider and a little faster, kind of like a GNCC style woods race. So that section of the course was wide and a little beat in. The rest of the course that they had cut was really tight and had some just really good flow. It did get super tight in some sections, and some of the clear cut was a little was off camber and a little hard to read, but they did a really good job of laying the course out, and with a combination of the weather and how everything was going for the day, it turned out to be a really good race. I've got to figure out how to get past that little mental block I've got going on right now, and I can't tell if it's just fatigue because there's a lot of driving involved with doing these races, or if it's something where I am just this race, just couldn't get into the hype to go ride. And while I was excited to be there and happy to go do the race, it was just something I couldn't get around. The cool thing about this place is that it had a lot of really significant elevation change, and they were big rolling hills because it's Appalachian Mountain kind of stuff, but it was still more significant than some of the stuff I'm used to riding. We get short, abrupt hill climbs and then descents, and here it seemed to be a little bit more sustained, like in this what looked like power line trail, or maybe it's gas line. You would, this long, sustained, not difficult uphill, and then immediately turn around and dive back down the hill. And it made for interesting course changes, made for a good ride overall. In the 6th test, which is where I actually felt the best all day long and finally got into the right mental state, there's a pretty significant, pretty gnarly hill climb that we all got to go do, and it was, I wish it was more of that the whole race, and I wish I felt like that the whole time. You see me for here, I don't know what I was doing, I was just not paying attention, just blow a corner. It's more of that mental state thing I'm talking about. And not making this whole video about how I just couldn't get into the feeling of riding, but it just shows that I was just not in the right place. And just not charging as hard as I normally do, and making goofy, weird, like just blow through a corner kind of mistakes for no reason. It was obviously clearly marked. I just decided I was going around that banner for some reason. And at the beginning of this test, actually, I did that to Josh was behind me, and I had made a mistake, and he ended up hotlining towards me and then was off trail. And it's like, he goes, "Why'd you do that?" And I said, I don't know. I just, took a turn wrong, and that's where I ended up. The crazy thing about this race is that Mike Lafferty, like multiple NEPG champion, KTM rider, raced this whole race in AA on a KTM 790 Adventure R and finished 10th in AA. You're really, really killer. And for how tight some of this trail got, it was a really incredible feat, actually. And talking to some other racers, he's apparently done Pennsylvania a couple years ago on a 1290R, which is even more impressive because that would be a pig to try and throw around in some of the really tight stuff that you got in Pennsylvania. And this single track is good, but it's not as tight as it got. It got tighter later on in the race. It really gets, you're like bar banging single track. And that's the stuff I generally enjoy, but with my front end being all loose like it was, I just couldn't adapt well enough. I generally thrive in this kind of stuff. I like the really tight, techy single track. And this race was no different. I felt the best in the really tight stuff. I was glad that it was there, and then with the elevation change and the quick direction changes there were in this race, it made for a place where I could feel like I was in my element more than how fast the rest of this race seemed to go. And when we got finished, the other guys I ride with were both remarking about how fast this race was. You were maintaining a lot more speed, and maybe that was part of it also with my performances, that I'm not the fastest rider. I do more tech stuff, and it tends to translate into I make up all my time in the single track. That's where I catch people generally. It's not in the wide open, and that's what this race series is really teaching me how to do, is to be faster in the wide open stuff, which seems like it would be easier to be faster in the wide open, but it's like any other skill. If you don't practice it, it's not something you're going to thrive in. And generally what I practice is that super tight tech single track stuff. I got invited to go do one of the sprint enduros, actually, because there's one the weekend of Labor Day. And while they seem interesting, them being 2 days long and me not liking field sections or field tracks, I can't think I would want to pay all that money to have something that I don't think it'd be any fun. But the wide open stuff is something I really do need to go out and practice, because I really don't get enough exposure to it. If I can't get into the mental state I need to be in all by myself, having somebody in front of me who's faster than me generally gives me the ability to, pace on them for how fast I need to be going. And I think this guy was I don't know where he was somewhere in the A class, and having him in front of me and then being able to try and chase him for a little while really made a difference in how I was riding, even just in this short part of the section. it was really refreshing for a minute to have somebody in front of me that was fast that I could get a tow with, you know, have him kind of pull me along and here's how fast you should be going kind of thing. Like I said, this video was just a little different because of what the what I ended up actually getting on my GoPro, and then I'm not super happy with my result. I mean, it's already over and there's nothing you can do about it, but just honestly, I wasn't super excited about how it finished, and felt like I could have done better if I could have just gotten myself into the game, so to say. But, you know, we got another round. I'm actually skipping Oklahoma because of distance and time and all that good stuff, so I'll see you guys in Indiana, and then one more round after that in Alabama. Next up, we've got the Little Brown Jug Enduro, and I'll see you then.